Tring tring. Hello students. So what did you just hear? Yes, the phone is ringing. The exam started at 9:25 a.m. and at 9:40 a.m. the examinations board rang through and the assistant secretary with special responsibility for modern languages asked to speak to the governor of HM Prison Oxford. The examination had already started, no doubt. So, over there, the assistant secretary was inquiring whether the examination had already started, whether everything was fine or not. A quarter of an hour ago. So, governor said it had already started for the last 15 minutes. Well, there was a correction slip which some fool had forgotten to place in the examination package. Very brief. Could the governor please? So, excuse me, what was the reason that he was calling? He was calling because there was a correction in the question paper and the correction slip was missed. So, he called in order to give the correction of the question paper to the student. Yes, of course, I'll put you straight through to Mr. Jackson in D Wing. Yes, I'll just put the line. Hold the line a minute. Was this the sort of thing the governor had feared? Was the phone call a fake phone call? Some signal? Some secret message? But he could check on that immediately. He dialed the number of the examinations board but heard only the staccato blips of a line engaged. So what happened? Suddenly things went on going on within the mind of the governor. He was thinking whether it was a hoax call, whether it was fake, whether there is some signal, some secret message passed on to Evans. So he immediately dialed the number of the examination board in order to recheck whether the call really came from the examination board and heard the staccato blips, that is the engaged tone. Staccato means with a gap, with a space, same sound with a space of a line engaged. But then the line was engaged, wasn't it? Yes, not very intelligent that. So the governor in his mind was every time fearful of the fact that Evans may escape. He could not entrust his, faith on Evans. 2 minutes later, he heard some whispered communications in the cell. Okay, so the sound microphone was placed there and he heard the communication from McLeary's Scots accent, Scots voice. So he was a Scottish person. Will you please stop writing a wee while, Mr. Evans, and listen carefully? Candidates offering German 0211 should note the following correction. So, McLeary was speaking in Scottish sound. Will you please stop writing, Mr. Evans, because there is a correction? Candidates offering German, that is the serial number 0211, should note the following correction. On page 3, so he was appearing for O-level German exam. On page 3, there is a change. Line 15, the fourth word should read goldenen, not goldeny, and the whole phrase will therefore read Zum goldene laue and not Zum goldeni laue. I will repeat that. So governor was overhearing, was budging in. It was the same correction. The governor did not sense anything fishy in that correction. The governor listened and smiled. He was probably getting too much over anxious, over suspicious on Evans. The governor listened and smiled. He had taken German in the 6th form himself. So the governor listened and smiled. Okay, fine. I am probably getting too much nosy, too much suspicious. He had taken German in 6th standard himself and he remembered all about the agreements of adjectives. And so did McLeary as he was correcting the mistakes in the question paper. By the sound of things, for the minister's pronunciation was very impressive. But what about Evans? He probably did not know what an adjective was. So the governor was thinking, McCleary is no doubt a very fine, very fine supervisor and invigilator. But what about the examinee? What about Evans? Is he getting an inch of what the correction is, or what the question is, or what his answers will be? He probably did not know what an adjective was. So he was suspicious, thoroughly suspicious of the fact that Evans may, try to dupe them. Evans may escape every time. He may escape the HM prison. So between the HM prison and the examinations board, this first phone call at 9:40 a.m. is very important clue. The phone rang again. I'm going to tell you later why is it a very important clue. The phone rang again. The magistrate scored this time. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers. So the phone rang again. Tring tring, and this time it was from the magistrate's court, because they needed a prison van with some couple of officers. Why? In order to take a remand case. And within 2 minutes, the governor was wondering whether that could be a hoax. Again, the governor was wondering whether this can be a hoax, because governor was totally suspicious about Evans and his ability to escape from the prison. So every time, every call, he was questioning to himself. He told himself not to be so silly. And then again at the next moment he was telling himself that it is becoming too much silly of him to think like this. Hoax means a fake call, a fake thing. His imagination was beginning to run riot. Run riot means he was getting, frenzy, clumsy. Riot means clumsy situation, a strife. His imaginations were struggling and striving within his head. And he called Evans. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephens had dutifully peered through the peephole at intervals of 1 minute or so. So he was thoroughly dejected and, he was thoroughly frenzy, and he thought, oh God, Evans, you are driving me crazy. For the first quarter of an hour, Stephens did his duty properly, peeping through the peephole within intervals of 1 minute or so. And after that, every 2 minutes. So gradually the time span of keeping an eye on the examinee and the invigilator gradually increased. At 10:45 a.m. everything was still all right as he looked through the peephole once more. It took 4 or 5 seconds, no more. What was the point? Stephens was thinking, what was the point in continuously looking inside the cell room with the same scenery, the same description inside? It was always more or less the same thing. Evans, his pen between his lips, you see in the second picture, he was always thinking, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking, it seemed, some sorely needed inspiration from somewhere. So he was always in search of the answers in the question paper. He was putting the pen within his lips and he was thinking and thinking as if he's going to get the inspiration from somewhere and write all the answers. And opposite him, McCleary, seated slightly askew from the table now, and opposite to him was seated his invigilator, Reverend Stuart McCleary. Table now, his face in semi-profile. Semi-profile means his face was visible in halfway. Okay, you look at this semi-profile, the last picture. Okay, his hair, as Stephens had noticed earlier, amateurishly clipped pretty closely to the scalp. That is, it was clipped very close to the scalp, to the forehead. And his eyes behind the pebble lenses. You see the pebble lenses beside in the picture, that is a round shaped spectacles. Okay, his eyes behind the pebble lenses, peering short-sightedly at the church times. So he was busy in glancing through the newspaper, the church times, while Evans was always sitting with the pen within his lips, thinking about an inspiration to come from somewhere so that he can answer the questions. And McLeary was sitting glancing the church times with his round-rimmed spectacle, and his face was visible in semi-profile manner, his right index finger hooked beneath the narrow clerical collar, and the fingers of the left hand, the nails meticulously manicured, slowly stroking the short black beard. Or by his other hand, he was just, tucking his beard, at times, and he was reading the newspaper with great concentration. This is the same sight every time. At 10:50 a.m., the receiver crackled to life again. Evans, please, sir. Please, sir. Would you mind if I put a blanket round me shoulders, sir? It's a bit parky in air, isn't it? So parky means a bit chilly in air. So at 10:50 a.m., the governor thought that there was a conversation going on in the cell of Evans. And what was the conversation? Evans was asking McLeary whether he could put a blanket around himself because it was getting cold there. Evans, there is one on me bunk here, sir. So he asked that there is one blanket on my bunk here. Here means there, sir. McLeary, be quick about it. And again silence. So McLeary gives permission. Evans put on a blanket. At 10:51 a.m., Stephens was more than a little surprised to see a grey regulation blanket draped means covered, round Evans's shoulders. And he frowned. Frown is a particular facial expression, you see, with eyebrows brought closer together and, to look more closely. Suddenly, Stephens peeped from the peephole and he found that Evans had draped a grey regulation blanket. And so he started looking at the examinee more closely. This is the expression of frowning, you see. He looked in more minutely because there was a change in the attire of Evans. But Evans, the pen still between his teeth, was staring just as vacantly as before, blankly beneath a blanket. So, before blankly beneath a blanket, should Stephens report the slight irregularity? What is the slight irregularity? That is, Evans had put on a blanket. That is the irregularity, because Stephens was ported there and strictly informed by Jackson to tell him if there is anything fishy. So you see, anything at all fishy, hadn't Jackson said? He looked through the peephole once again, and even as he did so, Evans pulled the dirty blanket more closely to himself. He was feeling cold. Was he planning a sudden Batman leap? You see, there I have attached the picture of a Batman. That is a huge leap, huge jump to suffocate McLeary with the blanket. So all of them had fear within their heart regarding Evans. He can do anything, anytime to escape from the jail. So Stephens was thinking, was he planning a huge leap to suffocate McLeary with the blanket? Don't be daft. Don't be silly, Stephens. Same thing was going on within the mind of the Stephens, just like the governor. There was never any sun on this side of this prison, no heating either during the summer months, and it could get quite chilly in some of the cells. Stephens decided to revert. Revert means to get back to his earlier every minute observation. So Stephens thought this is a very silly thing. So let me do my own duty once again. At 11:20 a.m., the receiver once more crackled across the silence of the governor's office. So this is again so the exam started at 9:25 and it is about to end at 11:25. So 5 minutes before the completion of the examination time, it was decided that a warning bell would be given. So the receiver crackled once again from the governor's office, and McLeary informed Evans that only 5 minutes remained. The examination was almost over now, but something still gnawed. Gnawed means went on. Quietly in the governor's mind, he reached for the phone once more. Okay, so once again he reached for the phone. At 11:22 a.m., Jackson shouted along the corridor to Stephens. The governor wanted to speak with him. So there was a phone call from governor's part, and the governor wanted this time to speak to Stephens. So Stephens was brought brought to the phone call, to the phone from the door of Evans. The governor wanted to speak with him. Hurry, man. Stephens picked up the phone apprehensively. Apprehensively means with a half heart. Okay, not quite sure about something, and listened to the rapidly spoken order. So Stephens was standing in front of the cell door looking every time. Now he was called to receive the phone towards Jackson, and he heard the order. Stephens himself was to accompany McLeary to the main prison gates. Okay, that was the order from the governor. Understood? Stephens personally was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McLeary had left the cell. Understood? So it was governor's order to Stephens to escort McLeary till the main gate, and the door of the cell of Evans be locked safely. Understood? Understood. At 11:25 a.m., the governor heard the final exchanges, that is the end of the exam, the final exchanges between the examinee and the invigilator. Stop writing, please. So these are the final exchanges at 11:25. Stop writing, please. Silence. Put your sheets in order and see they are correctly numbered. So the invigilator was telling everything that he needs to say. Silence on part of Evans. Okay, there was no word or sentences uttered by Evans. Scraping of chairs and tables, that is movement of chairs and tables. Evans, thank you very much, sir. So finally Evans says, thank you very much, sir. The exam has ended. McLeary, all right, was it? So McLeary asks, everything was fine, the question paper? And Evans answers, not too bad. Yeah, not too bad, but not too good. Yeah, so. McLeary, good. Mr. Stephens. So he was very loud. The governor heard the door clang for the last time. The examination was over. How did he get on, do you think? Asked Stephens as he walked beside McLeary to the main gate. So now Stephens was to escort McLeary to the main gate, and as instructed he did it, and while going he asked, how did he give the exam? Stephens asked McLeary. Oh, I cannot think. He has distinguished himself. So he speaks in a Scottish accent. McLeary. Oh, sure, I can't think. He has distinguished himself. I'm afraid. So he answered that I'm afraid Evans will not be able to pass. He will not be able to score good marks. I'm afraid. His Scots accent seemed broader, more and more imposed, more and more artificial it seemed. And his long black overcoat, you see, this is the long black overcoat reaching almost to his knees, you see, fostered the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. So it fostered the illusion, is that it focused the illusion that McLeary was appearing to be slimmer, as if he had shed on some fats, or maybe he had shed on some garments, that we will come to it later. So he was looking slimmer. His Scottish accent was more and more broader. That means more and more imposed. It had more accent with the Scottish accent that he was speaking. Stephens felt pleased that the governor had asked him and not Jackson to see McCleary off the premises, and all in all, the morning had gone pretty well. So Stephens, being a newly appointed officer, was feeling happy that the governor had called himself to talk to him and asked him to escort McCleary to the main gate and not Jackson, and altogether the morning was fine. But something stopped him from making his way directly to the canteen. So he was about to move towards the canteen, but something was prohibiting him. The thought that he needs to check on Evans for the last time. Canteen for a belated cup of coffee. He wanted to take just one look at Evans. It was like a program he had seen on TV about a woman who could never really convince herself that she had locked the front door when she had gone to bed. Okay, often she would got up 12, 15, sometimes 20 times to check the bolts. So here it is a simile. Stephens's apprehension within his mind to check on Evans, these are the bolts in the picture. To check on Evans for the last time was like a TV program. A lady who was always suspicious, always apprehensive whether she locked the bolts properly or not. And she checked, 15, 20 times whether she had locked it properly or not. Same thing was happening to Stephens at that time. His heart wanted to have a belated cup of coffee. Okay, but still he was not able to go. He went on to check Evans for the last time. So he re-entered the and made his way along to Evans's cell and opened the peephole once more. Oh no, Christ! Okay, so what happened? Oh no, Christ, no. There, sprawled back in Evans's chair, was a man. So there was a man sitting. For a semi-second, Stephens thought it must be Evans. Semi-second means for some couple of seconds, anybody will think that it must be Evans. But no, it was not Evans. A grey regulation blanket slipping from his shoulders, because the blanket that he was covering himself with was falling down, and the front of his closely cropped, irregularly tufted hair, awash with fierce red blood, which had dripped already through the small black beard, and was even now spreading horribly over the white clerical collar and down into the black clerical collar. So as he peeped within through the peephole, he thought, oh God, what did he see? There was a man sitting much similar to Evans, but as the grey regulation blanket was falling down off his shoulder, the clerical collar, the white collar and the black collar could be seen. And moreover, the beard, from the head there was blood, and blood was dripping from the beard towards the white clerical collar. So it was not Evans, actually a minister sitting there with the blanket on. Stephens shouted wildly for Jackson, and the words appeared to penetrate the curtain of blood that veiled McCleary's ears. So there was McCleary sitting and not Evans. So, for the minister's hand fell feebly for a handkerchief from his pocket. So the man sitting there, which they thought to be Evans, was actually McCleary sitting there, and McCleary was injured, blood was dripping. He took out the handkerchief from his pocket and held it to his bleeding head. So he was holding it to his bleeding head, the blood seeping slowly through the white linen. You can see in the picture when the handkerchief was profusely stained and soaked with blood. Okay, it became red. He gave a long, low moan. Moan means a deep sound out of pain, and tried to speak. But his voice trailed away. And by the time Jackson had arrived and dispatched Stephens to ring the police and the ambulance, the handkerchief was a sticky, squelchy wodge of cloth. Sticky, squelchy. Squelchy means draped, soaked with something wet thing. Wodge of cloth, a piece of cloth that was full of blood. McCleary slowly raised himself. His face twisted tightly, so McCleary slowly raised himself. So finally it is not Evans but McCleary. Okay, so His face twisted slightly with pain. Dinna worry about the ambulance, man. I am alright, I am alright. Get the police. I know where he closed his eyes and another drip of blood splashed like a huge red raindrop on the wooden floor. So again a simile. So McLeary was not bothered about his own life. He was telling his own injury. He was telling, call the police, call the police. I know where he has headed to. It was all in the correction slip, the signal and everything. I know. Take me out. And the blood was dripping on the floor like a red raindrop. His hand felt along the table, found the German question paper, and grasped it. Grasped means hold it tightly. Found the German question paper, grasped it tightly in his blood-stained hand. Get the governor. I know where Evans. So he was continuously demanding that he knows where Evans had headed to. Okay, let us see then what happens. Almost immediately, sirens were sounding, prison officers barked orders. So almost immediately, sirens were sounding, ambulance was coming, prison officers barked orders, puzzled prisoners pushed their way along the corridor. So what was happening? Doors were banged and bolted, and phones were ringing everywhere. And within a minute, McLeary, with Jackson and Stephens supporting him on either side, he was injured. His face now streaked and caked with dried blood, was greeted in the prison yard by the governor, So both Jackson and Stephens, so there was whole time chaos. Okay, Jackson and Stephens took McLeary, who was injured, okay, to the prison yard where he met the governor. And what happened to the governor? Governor was perplexed. He was confused. Look in the second picture. The governor was totally perplexed. He was confused and he was feeling grim and sad. He did not have a smile on his face. He was utterly confused that how did it all happen? How did in that passage of time Evans disguised himself and McLeary injured McLeary and went out? We must get you to hospital immediately. I just don't. You have called the police? Yes, they are on their way, but I am all right. Look here. So McLeary was bent upon showing them the place where Evans had escaped. Awkwardly, he opened the German question paper and thrust it before the governor's face. He said, I'm all right. Let me show you where Evans went away. Let me help you in catching Evans. It is there. Do you see what I mean? Okay, he showed him the question paper on his face. Look at it. It's everything here in the question paper. The governor looked down and realized what McLeary was trying to tell him. A photocopied sheet had been carefully and cleverly superimposed over the last originally blank page of the question paper. Okay, so in the originally blank page of the question paper, a photocopied sheet had been cleverly put over there, superimposed. Okay, cleverly, very cunningly superimposed on it in the last. That superimposed means copied or pasted just over it. You see what they have done? Governor, you see? His voice trailed off again as the governor, dredging the layers of long neglected learning. Long neglected learning refers to his learning of German. Wheeled himself to translate the German text that was superimposed the signal, the text before him. So neglected learning refers to German. Wheeled himself to translate the German text before him on the last page of the question paper that was very cunningly superimposed over there. What was written? Let's see. Si sole demsko vera bredete pla genofoge, dar vishe des elponki isidre manute vo ende des examens. So throughout it was written in German. What does it mean? You must follow the plan already something. The vital point in time is 3 minutes before the end of the examination. But something, 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 don't hit him too hard. Remember, he's a minister. And don't overdo the Scots accent when. So 3 minutes means 11:22. So the time of conspiracy, as was claimed by McLeary in the question paper, was 11:22, when somebody made a plan and asked him to hit the invigilator not too hard but just to injure him so that he could act as McLeary and go out with the prison officer. So everything was pre-planned and everything was there at the back of the question paper for now.